10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, praise the Lord, everybody. It's good to have everybody here on tonight. I pray everybody is doing well tonight. Pray everybody's doing well tonight. Can everybody hear me? Want to make sure everybody can hear me. First Lady, how we doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Bishop.
Good, good. So just let me know if you all can hear me. I want to make sure everybody can hear us. Just want to make sure everybody can hear. If you can hear us, make sure everybody can hear. If you can hear us, make sure everybody can hear. If you can hear us, let me know if you can hear us. Make sure everybody can hear. You can hear us. Let me know if you can hear us. Make sure everybody can hear. Everybody can hear. Good to see you. You can hear us. Know if you can hear us. Everybody can hear. Here we are again for the Midweek Motivation. You can hear us. Hear us. Everybody, here we are again for the Midweek Motivation. You can hear us. Everybody, here we are again for the Midweek Motivation. You can hear us. I just really want to. Everybody, here we are again for the Midweek Motivation. You can hear us. First thing, everybody, here we are again for the Midweek Motivation. You can hear us. What is happening? First thing is, everybody, here we are again for the Midweek Motivation. You can hear us. And what it is everybody, here we are again for the Midweek Motivation. You can hear us. Some of the things that are going on, it is everybody, here we are again for the Midweek Motivation. You can hear us. I want to say, good evening to all. Here we are again for the Midweek Motivation. You can hear us. Just pray that everybody is safe. Here we are again for the Midweek Motivation. You can hear us. You can hear us. They got snow and things like that, so I just pray. You can hear us. Got that out of the way now. This week, well, actually, you can hear us. That out of the way now. We have this week. Well, actually, You can't hear clearly. You can't hear clearly. We have too low. Well, actually, let me know if you can hear clearly. You can't hear clearly. We have too low. Let me know if it's too low. Let me know if you can hear clearly. Let me know that. Can't hear clearly. We have too low. Let me know if it's too low. Let me know if you can hear clearly. Because if it's too low, we can raise up the volume. Make sure the volume is good. Or if it's one or the other, if it's just if it's raise up the volume, like this first lady, I want to make sure like if it's one or the other, if it's just if it's raise up the volume, like this first lady, I want to make sure like if it's one or the other, if it's just if it's raise up the volume, like this first lady, I want to make sure like if it's one or the other, if it's just how about now? Now?
I don't hear it.
Okay. How about now? We should be good. We should be good. All right.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So sometime, because there's a lot of different volume outputs, so you're quite welcome. So this week, we've been hearing. I think we've been hearing it over several weeks, but I think now we're at a point where, as we're beginning this month of Black History and talking about the Black existence and the contribution that we've made to society, something unique is happening within the African American community, and we are experiencing a number of suicides. Um, we have watched just as of recently, which was just a travesty, as to watch a young lady, 30 years old, who was Miss America. Um, you know, she she committed suicide, and it's hard to believe that a young lady at 30 years old, um, her name was Chelsea Christ, and she committed suicide at 30 years old. She was an extra correspondent. You were Miss USA. You have your whole life ahead of you, and somehow, some way, something in her mind drew to the conclusion that she didn't want to live anymore. But I think what is most interesting about it is not that she committed suicide, but how she committed suicide. Because in the African American community, for the years that I have lived, those types of suicidal acts are not typically what you would find within the African American community. Then, for most of you that don't know, locally here in Hyattsville, um, and I guess the other part that is a little hard to believe is the individuals that we are speaking of. These aren't just not just anybody, um, but these are individuals that were they're not homeless. They're not in a sense struggling. Now we don't know the ins and outs of their life, but just from on the surface, they're not in what we would say are situations to what you would find a person committing suicide. You have Miss USA, and then the mayor of Hyattsville. He committed suicide. He committed suicide. Self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Um, it is hard to believe um, that this individual would take his life. Now, what's interesting, the mayor of Hyattsville was only 44 years old. So you have a woman at 30, you have a mayor at 44, then you have
Regina King's son
Regina King's son.
in his 30s as well.
No, he was
He wasn't?
26.
Oh, wow.
He was
I thought he was in
20,
his 30s.
26 years old. Our son will be 22 this year. What's happening in the African American community? What's happening? Something is happening. Something much different than what we have ever known is now happening, and it is now causing people that in the processes of their thinking in their mind, they're now saying the only resolve that they have is to commit suicide. So I thought that, and actually, as I'm saying that, something else has happened as well. Now, this isn't a suicide, but I just want to speak to what is happening within the African American community. So in the NFL, an NFL coach was fired. He was supposed to have another interview with another team. Inadvertently speaking to another head coach, a very prominent head coach, and those gentlemen and those people who watch sports know who I'm talking about. Bill Belichick is having a conversation with him by text. He is congratulating him on the acquisition of this new position, but he's actually congratulating the wrong person, because the Brian that he thought was getting the job, he was actually talking to the other Brian who's is African American, and in an inadvertent communication, actually revealed to Brian Flores that the position that he was actually going to apply for was actually already filled. And in a league where they have this rule called the Rooney Law, which was supposed to create a more diverse coaching platform, which was dominated by Caucasians, to open up the platform so that it could be more equally balanced, or at least remotely balanced, with an African American presence. Since the Rooney Rule was instilled in, I believe it was 2003, here we are in 2022. There were only 3 African American coaches in 2003, and now there's only 1. So where we are supposed to be getting better, we have gotten substantially worse. So I'm gonna go back to the suicide. I want to stay there. We'll come back to the Flores situation. Um, I want to know from you all that are watching, and I want you to tag someone. I want you to share this with someone right now. I want you to tag and share right now. I want you to tag and share right now, because I want to have a real conversation about mental illness. I want to have a conversation about how we need to interact, some signs that we can use to determine if someone is trending down the road to the possibility of suicide. Because I think what has happened, especially with the African American existence, this is not a conversation that we would typically have. We didn't see when I grew up, we didn't have conversations about mental health. And I would even say safely, I don't think any of us were having those conversations, and neither were we having conversations about depression, mental anxiety, stress, because the way that we're built to deal with very high levels of stress.
And that was frowned upon as well. So it was certain things that you did not talk about. For example, if you were depressed, going to therapy was not,
Oh, that's
that was not even a thought at all,
and
because
in most
it
cases,
was frowned upon.
and in most cases, I think because too, we probably weren't even either we didn't have insurance or we just didn't have the money. Healthcare has evolved, and so now a lot of things are covered, under healthcare.
Yeah, and I think it still goes a little bit beyond that because, for those that were, um, since we are in Bible study, it was frowned upon in the church as well. So it's not as until as of the most recent years that we begin to start talking about these topics inside the church because, again, it was frowned upon many years ago.
So let's talk about that part right there. I'm kind of glad that you said that part that you just said. Um, you said even in the church, um, that was frowned upon, and let's talk about that for a minute. Um, as a pastor in church, I am I am I am grievous in my heart to how we have not only managed or administrated the theory or the possibilities of mental illness. But the other thing that I am very grieved about is the fact that we say very little about it. Now, there are some leaders that know that I have said that I have been very concerned about leaders being in certain positions that I felt like lacked mental stability, even beyond the educational part. They lacked true mental stability. To me, they could not differentiate between certain logic, certain things that they would do and how they would handle themselves and then handle the people. And so because there was a lack of how people were dealing with certain things, it's a problem.
Very much so.
It's a problem. And I think that, as you said very beautifully, it was frowned upon. Because, see, when we grew up, everything was a demon, number one, and everything was typically dealt with by the pastor. The pastor was, I mean, he was everything, but in all in fairness, you know, just because you are the pastor does not necessarily mean that you have the educational prowess, you have the psychological prowess to speak to psychological and or mental issues.
That's
You
true.
cannot say that great preaching lends itself to or leads itself to the ability to manage people. That is an inappropriate assumption, but we have watched that happen.
Yes, we have.
And in many cases, what I have seen is the misappropriation of certain leaders who, in the name of Jesus, have used Jesus in an inappropriate way in trying to deal with certain things that needed to be dealt with clinically by individuals who have the profession
Yes.
to deal with certain matters. And because of it, we have seen some great travesties of misappropriated handling of people. Very bad, very bad. And now we're in an age where depression, suicide, mental anxiety are now really in the church. And the danger that I have watched within certain denominational backgrounds is the suggestion that depression will go away because you can dance or you speak in tongues or any of those outward attributes that we typically use in church to deal with certain levels of darkness and or mental isolation or mental instability. Now, I understand that a release at times will certainly help the mind. I get it. And I certainly would not want to digress from the thought that God is not a healer and that God cannot speak to the mind, regulate the heart, and all of those things. He is. He can do all of those things. But I also want to make it clear that to think that that will be the finality of everything concerning the mental anguish that a person is dealing with is dangerous.
I think it's very ignorant for anyone in leadership to allow that to be the finality, as you were saying, the cure for someone that may have mental issues. I think it's immature because we must get to the point where if you're in leadership, if you're not a professional, we must, I believe, we struggle with that because we are in leadership. We're full of pride and we are unlearned. So, therefore, when things come up, our answer is to jump, shout, dance, speak in tongues, and run around the church. But what happens, after that's said and done, the individuals are right back to square one, leaving the church, going back home in the same way that they came.
I think now it certainly is a more stronger conversation. I think we're not afraid to have the conversation. But I also believe that we're not having the conversation enough. And we are certainly not um, we're not doing a really good job in really promoting it and saying, hey, let's have this discussion on mental health. Let's really address this matter because where it's happening a lot. And I think in the African American church, I think what we need to do is we need to look at certain um, characteristics. We need to look at behaviors because now we're seeing suicide more preeminent in the African American community more than I have ever seen it. Or maybe, and this is just a suggestion, and those of you that are watching, you can chime in with your comments. Maybe it is because social media allows us to see it more. So there could be thought that these things were going on. It's just that now social media expands our exposure so that we can see it more preeminently. But clearly, right now, it is very prominent. It is very prominent. And I think what we need to do, we need to really open our eyes and we need to be aware of it, especially As parents, we need to watch our children because the isolations and things of always being in the room by yourself creates this environment where you are locked within the walls of your mind, and there is the battle. The battle is taking place in the mind. And so, what I wanted to do is I want you all to tag again, tag and share this, and I need to see you all tagging and sharing people with this tonight. Um, we're talking very professional. I was privileged to be able to take psychology, and there's some things that I want to talk about in this setting that I believe is going to be very good and healthy for us all. Um, and so, as you're tagging it, I pray that either they see it tonight and live or they see it as a replay. Um, so, as we're talking about the depression, one of the things that I wanted to do is I want to talk about the signs of depression. I want to talk about the signs of depression, and one of the signs of depression is a hopeless outlook. If you listen, if you're listening to people and their conversation is always hopeless, um, and then you know what else about the homeless, the hopelessness, First Lady, about what's going through their mind?
They may have other feelings of worthlessness, self hate, or inappropriate guilt. Common reoccurring thoughts of depression may be vocalized as it's all my fault or what's the point?
And so these are some of the signs. These are some of the signs that depression is setting in. And as we're having this discussion, I need you all, as we are ambitiously trying to do what we're doing in life, and I know all of us are, we're motivated to do what we do, and I love to see it. I love to see that motivation. I love it. But at the same time, while we're being motivated and while we are in our lane doing our thing, let's make sure we just peep over in the other lane to take a look at other people that are in our lives to see, are they having these types of feelings in this hopeless outlook. You know, are they in this mode of feeling worthless? Are they in this mode of self-hate? Are, and in self-hate, is it when you look at yourself, how do you feel about yourself? How do you feel about yourself? Because see, biblically, the Bible said, love your neighbor
Don't you
as you
love
love
yourself?
yourself. So I would just like to throw this in, as typically this would be a relationship night. I want to throw this in. Sometimes the difficulty with why a person can't love you is because they can't love themselves. They're struggling to love themselves. They're in a very tough place trying to figure out what's going on with me. But meanwhile, you are trying to figure out, what's going on with you. So Tracy said, I remember when I suffered from depression, it was so hard. I thank God for the help I had. I just felt so hopeless, and it's so difficult to see through it. And again, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. And you never know.
Yeah.
You never know that you slipped off into this place of hopelessness.
Yeah, it can be very difficult. I've been there as well too, but I want to go back to what you said, Bishop, about checking on others just to make sure. And
Yeah.
not only that, self-care and making sure that you're fine as well is just
Hmm.
as important, because
Hmm.
I immediately thought about Robin Williams, how he
Oh
would you
God.
know, make everyone else laugh, but look how he died. But all of his
Wow.
life he spent making everyone else laugh, but when he goes home, he's left to deal with himself.
And no
And
one checked on him.
no
Yep.
one checked on him, and even who's to say, because of his position in life, who's to say he would have even showed that? I mean, because sometimes we're in certain positions, you know, and high places, that we put on this facade every day, and
What
that
a
we don't
point.
really
What a
have
point. What a point.
anybody that we
What a
can
point.
really release to and let our hair down with. So I think in with this most recent Miss Chris, everybody said that there were no signs there. I watched, I think it was Gail King said that she was one of her mentors, and she was surprised. So what do you do
Wow.
when, you know, I know there are prophets and prophetess out there, but what do you do when nobody can sense that? When that's all, you know, everybody said that she was always happy, always bubbly. Nobody sensed it.
Wow.
So what happens when you don't have anyone that you can really express your heart to?
Wow.
What happens? I think this is a prime example. And would I personally say that there are others to blame? Yes, we need to check up on each other, as well
Wow.
as make sure we are healthy in our minds ourselves. But I think this is a classic case where, I mean, there were no signs. I've watched several interviews on YouTube from her coworkers. Nobody expected it at all. Even some of the interviews that she had, I watched, and just to look at her, you couldn't tell. She seemed just as happy as she wanted to be. So what? How do you handle that?
I think what has to happen. I think there are signs. There are definitely signs. Um, what I learned in psychology is it's a progression. It's never a from one extreme to the next. It doesn't go from 0 to 1,000.
Yes, I agree.
It's a slow progression. The issue is, and I'm telling you from what I know, and I pray somebody listen to me very carefully. What I know is that sometimes we are looking at an individual through our own eyes
Okay.
and not necessarily through their eyes. And I'm going to tell you what I mean. Because we're so used to measuring people by stuff,
Yes.
we're so used to measuring people by the way that they look, that we don't really take the time to listen or observe, so that certain behavioral things, almost like listening to a song. The unique thing about listening to a song, whether in the rhythm of the song or the tone of the singer, you can catch when something is off.
I agree.
What I have discovered is that in this time where we are so just isolated, we are typically looking through the lens of our own eye instead of really honing in to take a look to see what's really going on with the person. Because again, no one is going to leave out of here without a sign. They're always the sign. The question is, were we were we available enough to really see it? And in most cases, we're not, because we are so enveloped in our world and in
That's
our
true.
space. And then when it happens, the reason why we are so surprised, because in the lens of our own eyes, we are looking for more adverse characteristics and variances that lend to the typical observation of depression and or suicide. That's what we're looking for. It's almost like driving a car. We're not pulling the car over until the car like all the lights on the dash have come on, and the car is smoking, and now it's rattling, and it's really bad. Then we say, oh, I got to take this in to get this repaired.
Right.
Never realizing, no, when the first light came on,
That was the time to
that was
take
really
it
the time to say, let me go take this car in. We that's what I see more often. And I'm a smack my own self on the hand on this one. So I just want to make this clear. What I'm about to say, I myself am guilty, but I want to make this clear because you cannot continue to exist from the guilt and never deal with the guilt to do something that is better. For us, we avoid going to the doctors when we're supposed to and doing a lot of the mental and physical checkups that we should be doing. But what we do is we say, in the name of busy, we don't do it until something very adverse happens. And then we decide, oh my God, I gotta go see doctor. I gotta go to ER. I gotta go to urgent care. But there were already signs that were going on, and we don't adhere to the signs. We don't. So, along with um, that particular thing, where you talk about hopelessness and things like that, um, here's another one: anxiety, a person's actual anxiety. And while depression hasn't been shown to cause anxiety, the two conditions often occur together. And the symptoms of anxiety can include nervousness.
restlessness,
Hmm.
and feeling tense feelings of danger, panic, or dread, rapid heart rate, rapid breathing, increased or heavy sweating, trembling or muscle twitching, trouble focusing or thinking clearly about anything other than the thing you're worried about.
Because the mind is all over the place. All of these things, ladies and gentlemen, are signs that anxiety is kicking in, and you are now starting to slip off the scale into depression. Now, again, I want you all to tag somebody, share this with somebody, because I'm walking through these indicators. These are indicators that depression is setting in. These are things that I am sharing with you that depression is setting in. And depression is the bridge that leads over to suicide. And I want you all to hear us tonight as we're having this discussion, because sometimes you don't even know that a person that's living very close to you, sometime right in your own house, is actually experiencing this whole anxiety thing. They're experiencing nervousness. They're experiencing restlessness. It is not natural that you can't go to sleep. That's not good. That's not good. It's not normal for you to be feeling tense and having this feeling of danger and panic and dread. That's not natural.
It's not normal.
That's not, that rapid heart race and things like that. That's not normal. And I'm gonna tell you something that I need you all to be very aware of this. Sometimes when you've had a loved one to pass away, somebody that was very close to you, sometimes we take ourselves through this mechanism of suppression that inevitably leads to depression. We try to do everything for everybody. We try to make sure everybody else is good. We try to just be busy and do all of these things and never realize you're avoiding the problem is actually pushing you to a head-on collision
It is.
with the problem, because it was never the intent. When someone passes away, the whole "you're going to get over it" is actually a very damaging perception that you plant in someone's mind, because you're not made to get over. The mind is made to remember.
Yeah.
And it is very good in a healthy way that you have memories. Now, how you administrate the memories is one thing. The danger is when your memories of an individual cause you to digress to your social involvement. That's a problem. That's a problem. When you find yourself wanting to not be around people all of the time, when you find yourself um, drifting socially, when you find yourself you're sitting and all of a sudden you just almost like you blank out in your mind, and you're just sitting there, or you start your mind starts just wandering on all of these other things, and then you just lose focus.
That's what leads to the anxiety.
That's I'm telling you, that's what that is. I need everybody to look at it very carefully. Look at it carefully. These are the attributes. We're dealing with depression and the bridge that leads to suicide, and these are some of the characteristics. We're talking about the anxiety, and we're talking about all of these different things that can happen that you don't even realize that I'm slipping. I'm slipping into feeling nervous, and I'm feeling resentful. I'm feeling this rapid heart race out of nowhere, rapid breathing out of nowhere. You know, we've got all of these different things that are going on, and we don't even recognize that we're slipping. We don't even recognize it. And so Pastor Tully is on. God bless you, Pastor. Um, and so he says, what coping strategies are we using to deal with trauma? Well, in the thinking of trauma, um, sometimes, and just so y'all can understand, that the actual medical view of trauma is not necessarily when there's some brunt force that happens to you. Trauma is anything of any sort that emotionally takes you off course. So when that happens, what coping? Well, sadly enough, in the African American community, our coping has always been go to work, come home, do our normal thing. But see, the danger is now, because we are in a much more progressed time, our coping mechanisms are not as good as they used to be. And then the danger when you have a COVID-19 where we are now isolated away from one another,
That's made it worse.
because now you have to face the person that you've been trying to run from.
And not only that, all the times that you are able to kind of keep busy, go out and be social, now you don't have that opportunity and the leisure
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now you're really
Yeah.
faced to deal with those things that you've been suppressing all of this time that you may not have necessarily realized was there.
Um, so Sean, you got a question. You go ahead and shoot your question there, and we'll go ahead and put that question up. Pastor Tully was saying that ignoring is a dangerous coping mechanism. It is,
Yes,
to
it is.
me, probably one of the most dangerous, because you could be slipping into depression, but convincing yourself
That
that you're
you're
not.
not.
And that is one of the most dangerous things that you could do. And that is one of the things that happens in the Black community, because we don't ever, depression, the term of depression was very taboo, because depression for the Black community trended to the thinking of crazy,
Crazy. Yes.
right? So we don't want to use that term. We don't want to use that term. Um, are there any signs besides depression and anxiety that you are already listed? No, we just on those two. We got, I've got more. We're gonna, there's a whole lot of other ones. Trust me. There's a whole lot of other ones, and I'm going through them. And so, just so you'll know, the two that we've discovered already. We talked about the hopeless outlook, and then the hopeless outlook is a major depression, is a mood disorder that affects the way you feel about life in general. And having a hopeless or helpless outlook on your life is the most common symptom of depression.
Other feelings may be worthlessness, self hate, or inappropriate guilt. Common reoccurring thoughts of depression may be vocalized as, it's all my fault, or what's the point?
And so that was the first one. Okay, that was the first one. And then we went from there, and we said, not only does a person feel hopeless, but then the next thing that happens
As anxiety.
is the anxiety.
What, while depression hasn't been shown to cause anxiety, the two conditions often occur together. Symptoms of anxiety can include nervousness, restlessness, or feeling tense, feelings of danger, panic, or dread, rapid heart rate, rapid breathing, increased or heavy sweating, trembling or muscle twitching, trouble focusing or thinking clearly about anything other than what you're worried about.
So again, these are the things that could be going on. So we've only covered those two. All right, we've only covered those two, and I mean there's a whole lot of other stuff that's going on. So go ahead, shoot your question there, Sean. So can depression start if someone or somebody always blame you for everything? Well, I think what's happening is something is definitely going on, because it certainly suggests, if the blame is always outward, then one of the things that I have learned in psychology is that instead of you dealing with certain things, you block everything,
Mhm.
and you then try to force the other person to feel a certain kind of way. And certainly that is one of the attributes that can happen, because you're blocking everything. Now, it's not necessarily a depression characteristic. Um, but to Pastor Tully, that's a coping mechanism. That something has happened individually, and it also lends to a lack of feeling feeling like there's worth in you, like you're unsatisfied in your own life, and because you're unsatisfied, this is what is going on. Uh, Anxiety is the love child of depression, because the feeling of loneliness also triggers that the world is against you. And so fortunately, for those of you that don't know, Pastor Tully is a licensed social worker. And so he had studied psychology, and has just recently got his master's degree. And so this is not some person that's just talking from off the top of their head. This is an individual who has studied clinically the issues that take place within this whole issue of depression and suicide. So, and I'm grateful that one, he's a son of the ministry, but two, he's also uh, clinically licensed to talk about what he's talking about. So I'm grateful that that he's on. So Sean, it doesn't necessarily lend to depression, but it certainly speaks to some issues that are going on there. Um, because even if certain things are wrong, to always deflect and never at least take part uh, to the resolution of a thing certainly suggests that there is clinically something
Something
wrong.
going on, yes.
Something is definitely going on. And these are some of the attributes and things that have happened since COVID-19. So don't, that speaks to some other issues there. Now, as we're again on this whole conversation about depression and suicide, here's another thing, another attribute that uh, is one of the things that you will see when there's this issue that is going on, and that is a loss of interest. And
Dep-
so, go ahead, sweetheart. Go ahead.
Depression can take the pleasure or enjoyment out of things you love, as loss of interest or withdrawal from activities that you once looked forward to, sports, hobbies, or going out with friends, is yet another telltale sign of major depression. Another area where you may lose interest is sex. Symptoms of major depression include a decreased sex drive and even impotence.
So here's another characteristic that happens within the scope of suicidal thoughts and feeling depressed, where now you have this loss of interest. Uh, you don't feel like doing anything. You're not motivated to do anything. Um, you just have a very melancholy approach. You do one thing, and then that's all you do, and then after that, it's just you just shut down, and that shutting down becomes one of the signs, the telltale signs that something is wrong. Now, it's interesting in the clinical observation of loss of interest that they also say that your sex drive actually decreases. And I will say this for couples that are out there that could also tell you that something is going on that is not necessarily something physically going on in your body, because we also know that there are certain medications that cause levels of impotency and the lack of wanting to be intimate with your partner. So we're aware of that, but there it is also things that are going on mentally,
Mhm.
because the problem is, and those of us that are mature and now in a better place to understand the beauty of making love, is that it is hard to make love when your mind
Mind
is
is,
making
yes,
other imaginations.
yes,
It is very difficult because in order for the love to be made, there must be a focus of the mind. And if the mind is not focused, then unfortunately that that adrenaline and endorphin that drives you sexually, well, unfortunately it's almost like pressing a nitro button on a car. I mean, you get a quick explosion and then it dies out because now there's no motivation. And unfortunately, love needs more than just parts in order for it to be
absolutely,
motivated.
absolutely.
There has to be something uniquely between the two individuals that through the process of making love that it stirs the emotion, it regulates the mind, which stimulates the mind, releases that endorphin that drives you to want to be with the person even more. And so, the difficulty is it's hard to have that focus when you just lost your motivation to do anything.
Yeah, that is true. And I would say for couples, if you notice that your partner, their body language has changed while you all are intimate, it's time to stop and say, "Hey, let's talk about it. I know you don't respond to me the way you did at one point. What's going on?" And a sensitive partner that really cares about the health and the mental welfare of their spouse, it may feel like an inconvenience, but that's something that needs to be addressed, because you can't really enjoy lovemaking until the mind is 100% there. And if it's me, I want to know what's troubling my partner. I want to know.
First lady, so here's a question, and I don't want to get off of the depth of this conversation about depression and suicide. But since you brought up, you know, this conversation about relationship, and I think all of our viewers know how we view our relationship, how we love one another. Um, do you think that in the conversation, the narrative of relationship, do you believe that there is a fear to have certain conversations for the fear of what the partner will say?
I believe so, yes. And it also depends on where the couple is in their relationship. But at no given time, unless the individual I feel has been struggling with depression for so long and the enemy has put something in their mind that, okay, I've been with my husband or wife this long, and I want to share it with them, but I'm afraid this is going to happen, or they're going to feel this way, or they're going to be angry, or they're not going to want me anymore. There should never be a point at all where your mate feels like that at all. It should not be.
So is it, so should we say that if you are having if you're having a trouble having a conversation with your mate at any point, but in particularly if you cannot have a conversation about the sexual intercourse that is not happening, I think it's safe to say that there needs to be a time where certain you got to seek some help.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you got to seek some help because it is dangerous in a time where sexual promiscuity is so high
Yes.
and it is so available everywhere that you go home and you have no drive at home. You have no drive at home. I mean, she walks past you and she is completely unclothed and there ain't nothing in you that is moved. That's a problem. That's a problem. If you no longer have any feeling towards him at all because you are just totally turned off about him, those are signs that there's a problem there, and you better get that addressed, and you better get that addressed very, very
Yes.
quickly because it then leads to unfaithfulness and external affairs and things like that. So pastor said yes, the fear of rejection and judgment can stop an individual from opening up, absolutely. And that's why sometimes in relationship it, you have to sometimes you have to sense certain things, like you, if you're talking to your mate and you can tell, like if like between us, we're so in tune that I know when certain things aren't well with you. Like I know when I need to disengage and just let you get some rest, or I know when I need to say, hey, let's talk, baby, come on, let's just talk. um and sometimes, and I want to say this to somebody that really is listening tonight, and certainly we're on the narrative of depression and suicide, and we're going to go over all those other things. We just kind of parked here for a minute talking about relationship. I want to say to somebody, sometime the two-way conversation actually just needs to be a one way where one person is talking and the other person is listening. Sometimes you just need to just lend your ear, because sometimes they just need to get some things off of their chest. They just need to talk about some things, and it's not that they're insensitive towards you. It's just that they're so filled with so much of what they're dealing with that they just need a moment of out. They just need a moment. They just need a moment. Um, so Pastor said depression draws you away from connection. Now, again, I can tell you these are all the things that these are signs, ladies and gentlemen. And I hope you're kind of writing some of these things down as you're viewing this, or I hope that you will share this broadcast with someone, because these are the things that we need to be aware of that's happening within the African American community. These are the things that are happening. Um, and if we're not careful, we slip off. And by the time you really want to give it some real attention, we're now in a very, very bad place. And one thing I know, when a person begins to really slip off into that dark place, it may be a little harder trying to pull them out.
Yes, and it can be. And speaking from experience, years ago, I never really thought about it, but I would find myself sleeping a lot. And someone that was near and dear to me, made the comment, "You're sleeping, an awful lot," but you would be surprised at, something as simple as that. That's a sign of depression. I understand being tired is one thing, but when you find yourself laying
Absolutely.
around in the bed every day, sleeping all the time, it's a difference between just being worn out, and just in the bed all the time. Though that's a sign of depression, whether you want to believe it or not. It is.
And
And
again,
if you find
let's
yourself
there it is.
wanting to sleep all the time, not wanting to get out the bed, finding it very difficult to get out of the bed, it's time for you to talk to somebody.
Because again, the loss of interest, you just don't feel like doing anything. The anxiety, that anxiety, that those feelings, you know, restlessness. You feeling some kind of way. You feeling some kind of way. Um, you know, hopelessness. Just all of these different things that are going on, that not even realizing it, that you're slipping. You're slipping. And if you're not careful, you slip off into this place, and I'm telling you, you can find yourself in a dark place real quick. I mean, real quick. And by the time you realize it, now these other thoughts have now started to creep in. So, you know, ladies and gentlemen, as I'm having this discussion, I need you to share this with your family, with your friends, um, and then become a little bit more observant. Be a little bit more observant, because certainly your observation could save somebody's life.
God.
I mean, it could save somebody. I mean, it really could. Pastor was saying support systems helps individuals with depression because 50% of the time their set is being alone. And I'm telling you, it starts very subtle, and you find yourself drifting away from your social involvement. You do. And then when someone commits suicide, they are alone. You'll never find nobody committing suicide in a room full of people. You ain't never gonna find nobody committing suicide at a basketball game, football game. It typically they're by themselves, and they succumb to the voices and and feelings that are pushing them to believe that they have lost their worth. And that is the reason why that happens. That's why that happens. And so that is the reason why I'm saying to you all to tag and to share this with someone, because one thing I've learned about depression and suicide, it don't care how much money you make.
It does not.
It doesn't care about your nationality, your ethnicity. It doesn't care about your gender. It doesn't care about your age. It doesn't care about your sexuality. It hits everyone, and no one is exempt. So I am asking you to please share this with somebody, because you would be surprised. Who would have ever thought that Miss USA at 30 years old was feeling some kind of way? Who would have ever thought? Who would have ever thought the mayor of Hyattsville was feeling some kind of way? Who would have ever thought the son of one of the most gifted and beautiful actresses in the modern era would be feeling some kind of way to commit suicide. Who would have ever thought? Who would have ever thought? So that tells you that there is no specific person that has this feeling of worthlessness. It can hit anybody at any
Anytime.
time. So, and then as I'm saying that, here again, here's another attribute that we need to be aware of. It's called the irritability in men. Because in men, depression can affect the sexes differently. And research shows that men with depression may have symptoms such as irritability. They have this risky behavior, their substance abuse, or they misplace their anger. These are the things that are going on.
Men are also less likely than women to recognize depression or seek treatment for it.
And why? Because men are more mechanical. We're more mechanical. And because of the mechanics of a man, we'll just push it off to, I'm tired, I'm overworked, you know, I this is just who I am. And here's one thing I also know. In the mind of a man, one of the things that therapists have discovered, men struggle harder to even think that they themselves can be depressed,
I believe that.
because depression is typically a more emotional type of feeling, even though it is the digressed approach to the emotion, but it is still an emotion. And because genuinely men are not that emotional, the theory that I'm depressed doesn't even resonate in the mind of a man. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. You don't see that. Men don't necessarily they don't move in that way. That's not their, that's not the way that they function. So it is very difficult for a man to suggest that he himself is depressed. And I'll even go a step further and add this in, and it is even worse when you look at teenagers. They don't see it as depression. Their thinking is, I just don't feel like it.
That's good. That's true.
I'm not there.
That's true.
That's their feeling. And so because they attribute it to that way, there is less of a thought to the possibility
And
that,
it lends to other behaviors as well.
exactly, exactly, like increased fatigue.
And sleeping problems. Part of the reason you might stop doing things you enjoy is because you feel very tired. Depression often comes with a lack of energy and an overwhelming feeling of fatigue, which can be among the most debilitating symptoms of depression. This could lead to excessive sleeping. Depression is always linked to insomnia, as one might lead to the other, and vice versa. They can also make each other worse. The lack of quality, restful sleep can also lead to anxiety.
And so there's where you were talking about that. And again, I want to say, you got to watch, like your family member caught you sleeping excessively, and it just says that something is wrong. Something's wrong. And we just need to take a minute out of trying to be, you know, the next top model, or being, the next business in Fortune 500, or being the next TD Jakes, Juanita Bynum, Noel Jones. We just need to stop for a minute and just take a look at our surroundings and ask ourselves what is going on with our loved ones. And even the more, what is going on
With
with me?
ourselves. Yes.
What's going on?
I believe that social media, although depression has been around for many years, but I believe that because we have social media and all of this internet access now, we see it more. But I believe, of course, it has its benefits and
Indeed.
the negative side of it. And I believe the negative side of it comes when you do have individuals that are depressed or heading down that direction, and there's so much false things that are out on Facebook. People kind of portraying that they're something that they're not, and they're living these lifestyles when you may have an individual that's feeling some type of way, and they use Facebook as a measuring tool. And I think a lot of that contributes to kids committing suicide,
Yeah.
and people doing things that just because of how of a perception that they see on Facebook and social media that's not even real. So we have people taking their lives because they're using social media to measure themselves against people that are really not living the way they are portraying themselves. They're not living those types of lifestyle. It may look one way, but behind the scenes it's not. But the individual that's struggling to maybe kind of get ahead and just dealing with things with life in general, it makes it hard because there's a feeling of, okay, well, I'm here and they're here, but I'm trying to do this and I can never get ahead. And depression starts to sink in because you're measuring yourself against something that's not real.
Wow.
So sometimes we have to pull away from social media. It has its benefits, but it can be very negative at times. And when you find yourself scrolling down Facebook or Instagram and you find yourself feeling some kind of way, in my opinion, it's time to digress. It's time to pull away from social media for a while because it has too much of an effect on you.
It's um it's very unique how we're always searching for satisfaction in the validation from other people. We're overwhelmed with this feeling that I'm not there. Because I see this person and I see these people, and so it makes you envious and jealous of other people, and that feeling of jealousy drives you to feel not not worthy in your own life, ugly. Um, you feel like because you're not fashionable like other people, you know. Um, I know one of the other things that we saw, and it's still out there, is just that we have so many other things that have now captured the eye of the media. But we watch these kids being bullied
Yes.
um, because they're not in certain places when it comes to the crowd. So when you look at the crowd or the herd, you have an alpha that's in the herd. The alpha dominates how the herd interacts with the weaker ones in the herd. And then if the weaker one is not strong enough to counteract a lot of what is happening within the herd, then there's this feeling of self worthlessness. You just feel like you're not worth anything, and it then begins to lend to all of this other behavior. And so again, as I'm sharing this, I'm just hoping that you all are sharing these things because we want you to share it, um, you know, with your family and your friends. Pastor was saying, identify crisis, false reality, and people expectations. These are things that go on uh, in life where you get caught up so quickly, and social media is like a fantasy land,
Yeah, it is.
because it starts to give you this false perception about somebody's life, and they're not even that at all, um, because they're truly not happy with their life. And many people are actually living out a satisfaction in the virtual world because they are not happy in their real world.
And I know some people may think that's crazy, but I think there is a way for you to see exactly how much time you spend on social
Yes, you can.
media.
You can.
And
Yes,
if you're on social media a lot and you're not in the right headspace, I'm going to tell you it will affect you.
absolutely.
It will affect you,
It
whether you believe it or not.
absolutely, absolutely. You have no idea that with all of this time that you're spending on social media, you spend all this time in a virtual world, and you're becoming unplugged from the real world. And this is why things are the way that they are. This is why. Um, this is why. And it is one of the signs independently. Let me say this. It is one of the signs independently that there is a lack of something going on in your life when you feel the need that your whole life is wrapped around
Social media.
living in the eye of the virtual world, when in your natural world you're not even where you really are trying to portray. And I'm going to tell you, the worst lie that you could ever tell is the lie that you are telling
No,
yourself. You There is no worse lie. There is no worse lie that you could ever tell. And and the danger of the lie that you tell yourself is when you perpetually tell a lie to yourself, and now you convincingly have honed the lie so that it fits, even though the core of it is still a lie. It's still a lie. I mean, so Tracy said it's hard to detach from it. It definitely becomes a reality for some people. You have no idea.
yes, it does.
Oh, it is everything. It's everything. Like, I mean, you are the prophetess on Facebook, but I mean, you can't even see from your living room to your kitchen. I mean, your gift is I mean, you and I love it when they go on Facebook and say, I don't know who this is for. You got 5,000 friends. I promise you, if you just put it out there, it's going to be applicable to somebody. You
Somebody.
got 5,000 friends. I mean, come on. I mean, really? You think you're that prophetic when you get on and say, the Lord told me to tell somebody? I mean, really? I mean, really? I mean, come on now. I mean, come on. Like, I mean, you are, I mean, you are the Facebook's prophet, but you couldn't see your breast thing. I mean, come on.
Shucks.
I mean, some things you don't need to be prophetic. But again, because you're in that world, and so because you're in that world, you believe that it is the real world. And then when they call you to come to the live service, and now they want to see your prophetic gift at work, and the only thing they can see is that one shoe is worn down than the other shoe. I mean, or yay, the Lord said, you overweight. Well, what told you that? This size 48 dress? I mean,
But yeah, we're just taking a commercial break, but really, you have to be careful
you
with
have to.
social
I mean,
media. You
it
have to be careful.
it has its good, it has its place, but when it is dominating your life the way that it is a sign. It is truly, truly a sign that there is a level of unhappiness that you have with your life. Like, if you find yourself, it is amazing how in the world you go on Facebook, and the only time you tell your mate that you love him is on Facebook.
Yeah, that's a problem.
You can't tell your mate that you love him face to face. I mean, why do you need Facebook to tell your mate that you love them? I express my love because I want the I'm trying to display to the world what healthy love is. That's why we do what we do. But we are very comfortable. I mean, extraordinary in our comfort with one another in our love. We are. And because we are, we, it's we don't need Facebook, we don't need Twitter, we don't need Instagram. And so Pastor was saying that overindulgence is never healthy. It's not.
Never.
But again, you got people that they're indulging, I mean, a lot. And so again, to reiterate, that increased fatigue and that sleep, that ladies and gentlemen, that's a problem. That's a problem. And then when you think about that, here's something else to think about.
Changes in appetite and weight. Weight and appetite can fluctuate for people with depression. This experience may be different for each person. For some, for some people will have an increased appetite and gain weight while others won't be hungry and will lose weight. One indication of whether dietary changes are related to depression is if they're intentional or not. If they're not, it may mean that they're caused by depression.
Because again, it's one thing when you didn't drop 20 pounds because you've been at the gym and you've been running and you've been in, just working on. It's another thing when literally you just going through life doing certain things and all of a sudden you just wake up and you just can't fit nothing. You just can't fit nothing. Like everything you wear has now is falling off you. That's a problem. And again, depression is the pathway to symptoms to other disorders, and it lends to a lot of other things. I can tell you from experience because I knew a young lady like this in school many years ago. She was going through depression, and in going through depression, she lost her appetite so bad that she became anorexic. She became anorexic, and that's what Pastor was talking about. How one thing lends to the other,
Yeah.
because she was so depressed that she just would not eat at all. She just would not eat. She wouldn't eat, and she literally just thinned away. And thanks be to God, a lot of her closer friends got to her because she became very, very sick, very sick. So again, these are things that we're just admonishing you that hey, take a look at what's going on around with your family and your friends. Just ask somebody, talk to somebody, be involved. Sometimes you don't even don't I mean don't just go up to hey, are you depressed? I mean they're not going to know it, and even if they were, they're not going to tell
Oh, yeah.
you. But if you would just be concerned, just be concerned and be in their life, because even while you deal with the anxiety and the hopeless feeling and loss of interest and all of these other things and weight loss and sleep, here's another thing, uncontrollable emotions, just uncontrollable emotions.
1 minute is an outburst of anger. The next you're crying uncontrollably. Nothing outside of you prompted the change, but your emotions are up and down at a moment's notice. Depression can cause mood swings.
I mean, you go from one extreme to the next, like, I mean, like lightning. That's a sign because emotionally, we're not made to be that unstable. We're not made to be that way. And
Uh-huh.
these are symptoms. Now, I will also say this, and I want to make this clear as we're talking about this. All signs of depression do not necessarily need medication. Let me say that again. All signs of depression do not need medication, but they do need therapy. Something needs to be addressed, and it is not always through medicine. Sometimes you just need to let somebody hear you. You just need to have someone. And so again, it's very very important that you are not just isolating things and just just trying to do it on your own. And so the support system is the first responder to help the individual.
Yes,
But
it is.
and you gotta know, like you gotta have enough care. Just be watchful. And sometimes the greatest medicine to depression is care,
It is.
is love.
It is. And we get so caught up in our day to day lives, and I know we're all busy, but you would be surprised at what it will do for someone that's going through for you to just listen. You may be tired, you may not feel like hearing it, but you never know that one time when they call you that you don't feel like talking or you don't feel like listening, that 10-minute, 20-minute, or even an hour conversation, just you listening, you would be surprised at what that will
Oh
do
my
for
God.
that individual or what it would possibly stop them from doing, because you don't know. They could be contemplating suicide. They're not going to tell you that. All they want is somebody to listen, and every conversation does not merit a response. The person just wants to know that you're there and that you are aware and not just hearing them, but you are actually listening to them. That's all sometimes they want to
That's all.
know.
That's
That's
all.
all.
That's all. I mean, it can sometimes that's just the greatest thing. Um, I'm telling you. And Tracy said, I'm so blessed to be an ear for my child. Sometimes our children don't need our advice; they just need our ear.
That's all.
They just need our ear. They just do. They just do. I mean, they just need our ear. That's all they need. Um, I mean, sometimes they need our direction because sometimes they all over the place. They just all over the place. But sometimes more than anything, they just want to be,
Heard.
you know. I mean, really, mom, dad, just hear me, just hear me. Um, and because we take that time to allow them to hear, then this is what happens. Um, and again, that's biblical. That's very very biblical. Um, be slow to speak and quick to hear. That's biblical. Um, and yeah, we talked about that earlier. I mean, there's no you think that you don't you can't happen to you, and the next thing you know, you didn't slipped off. So um, Destin says, uh, you too have always shown me there is always another way to the problem. Then sometimes you show me just listen and then try to solve the problem. And again, that's our son, and he's sharing with you some of the things that we do here, because again, we definitely go about doing things to help our children to manage things better. And yes, I agree, Sean. Depression
It's
is
real.
100% real. The danger is in the Black community. We have thought that we are not susceptible, like we are impregnable, like it cannot happen to us. But in fact, as we said earlier, and then Tracy just reiterated it, it doesn't care about how much money you make. It doesn't care about
It
your
does
your
not.
nationality, ethnicity. It doesn't care about your gender. It doesn't care about your age. It doesn't care that uh, you're socially involved or you're socially not involved. All it knows is that when it shows up, if you are not able to manage it, it will overcome. It will overcome you. So don't ever think that it can't happen to you. And certainly, of all the things that we had talked about, here is another thing that I think everybody needs to be aware of. It is looking at death.
Depression is Depression is sometimes connected with suicide. In 2013, more than 42,000 people died from suicide in the United States, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention trusted source. People who die by suicide usually show symptoms first. Often people will talk about it or make a first attempt before succeeding in ending their life. If you think someone is at an immediate risk for self harm or hurting another person, call 911 or your local emergency number. Stay with the person until help arrives. Remove any guns, knives, or medications or other things that could cause harm. Listen, but don't judge, argue, threaten, or yell. If you think someone is considering suicide, get help from a crisis or suicide prevention hotline. Try the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800-273-8255.
And I want to really make this clear that um, If you really know someone that is feeling that way, please take down that number, 1-800-273-8255. That is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. Don't think that it cannot happen to you, because it can happen. And you cannot, under no circumstances, ever think that it can't happen to you, because it can happen to you. Don't ever think that it can't, because it can. It really, really can. Um, and yeah, um, Tracy was saying it's such a blessing Destin is allowed to help others, and yeah, he does. He really does. Absolutely. And I pray, Karima, if you get a chance to kind of replay this, you'll hear us talk about um, some of the things that we outline as signs, because there are signs to it. There are signs. And the signs that you need to be looking for in the event that someone is contemplating on committing suicide. So, again, let's just kind of go back over these. I just want you all uh, to write these down if you haven't written them down, or if, again, you can go back and look at this as a replay. Um, that hopeless outlook, um, the feeling of worthlessness and self-hate, and the inappropriate guilt, and you know common recurring thoughts of depression may be vocalized as it's my fault, or what's the point. Those are things that you need to be looking at. um and absolutely, Tracy, this is very important. That's why we stopped to really talk about this. This is very important. It's important when people have anxiety. It's
Absolutely.
important. It's important when there's nervousness and restlessness, and feeling tense, and the feeling of danger, panic, and rapid breathing, and trembling, and increased sweating, and all of these attributes. That's an issue. It's an issue when a person has a loss of interest. It's an issue. It's an issue when
They
they don't want to do.
withdraw.
They just don't want to do nothing.
Yeah.
They just don't want to do anything. That's a problem. And sometimes that, well, just leave them alone, is not the right answer.
Answer.
It's not the right answer. It's not the right answer when a man is just irritable.
Irritable.
That's not the right answer. Listen, when a man is irritable and he's just abusive, and then, or he's misplacing that anger, that ain't it. If his sex drive starts dropping, that's a sign.
That's a sign.
That's a sign. That increased fatigue and
Sleeping.
excessive sleeping. That's a problem. That's a problem. That is a problem. That's a problem. And it can be very, very overwhelming. It can. And it does. It really does. It does make you feel like you're just in a maze. That doesn't, because you're going round and
That's
round
a
and
good
round and
way
round.
to explain that, Lady
Absolutely.
Tracy. Perfect
Absolutely.
example.
And that's the reason why we have to be more aware of the people that are around us when certain things just don't look right. Like, it's a problem when every time they come around you, they don't want to eat. Whenever you see them, they're not eating, or in the reverse. Because that's the other thing that we didn't talk about. Sometimes it's not the lack of eating, it is the excessive eating.
I think we have a lot of that in our African American
We
community.
definitely have a lot of that in the African American community. Um, and could Tracy was saying, that whole maze thing is how she felt. It's how she felt.
It's almost as if you feel like you've been placed in a box and there's absolutely no way out. Your mind is all over the place.
And that the walls of the box are
Caving
closing in.
in,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. And so that change of appetite or excessive eating, and uncontrollable emotions, that's another issue. Just absolute out of control emotions. You just feel some kind of way. Uh, and this is the reason why, Pastor, that we were having this discussion, because it is a much needed discussion. And I think everybody, I think all of us need to be talking about it, because I just believe in the African American community, we are not talking about it as much, because there is a mythical thought that it ain't happening to us, and we're watching it play out right before our eyes. We're watching it play out.
And I would even say this, Bishop. You have parents, we have to be careful and watchful for our kids because
Absolutely.
they may be acting out, but it may be as a result of depression. And what's even worse, you may have your child acting out because they're depressed and you don't know. But how can you help them if you're depressed yourself?
Indeed. 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 And then with all of these different things that are going on, with all of these things that are going on, each one very, very important to the signs of what's going on that inevitably lead to looking to die. And once you get there, it is a very dark place. It is a very lonely place. And I'm just saying, ladies and gentlemen, when you are aware of something like that, I believe it's time to get on the phone, call somebody, and just say, hey, I believe that there is someone that I know that is feeling suicidal. And that's when you call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1 800 273 8255. And I'm praying that you all are wrote those things down, because you don't want to get to that place, and you don't want to see your friends and your neighbors get to that place. You really don't. Uh, you really, really don't. So uh, I pray that this was a blessing to all of you. I'm going to talk about the Brian Flores situation in the NFL. I'm going to get to that. I'm going to talk about that within these next coming weeks. But I really wanted to focus on this whole issue of mental health. And I'm encouraging you all, please. Also, don't feel ashamed to go and to see a therapist. And if I could give you some advice on that, please seek a Christian therapist. And I will also say, get a therapist that is of your own nationality, because, I'm trying to not throw spite on other nationalities, but here's one thing I know: a black therapist can speak to the black mind better, because they themselves have gone through certain things and are aware of certain things that a Caucasian therapist may not. And that's just a fact. And one thing I've learned, it is hard to speak to something if you yourself have not either experienced it or have no awareness of it. And one of the things that we've learned about our Caucasian brothers and sisters is that some things that they are just oblivious to. They don't understand some of the things that we've had to go through. But when you have come through as an African American person, you are very aware of certain things that have happened. And it does lend to your ability to help and to deal with certain things. It does. And so I would just say, as we are wrapping up tonight, um, please don't think that for 1 second it cannot happen to you. Please don't. Please don't. Please don't ever think that you are oblivious to any of those things, because I'm telling you, as sincere as I possibly can, it can happen to you. Don't ever think that it can't. Please don't ever think that it can. Uh, Bless you. Um, it can happen to you. Don't ever think. Please don't ever think it can't happen to you, because it can happen to you. There ain't nobody. I don't care what your age is. I don't care what you think or who you think you are. It can happen to you.
It does not have a face.
No, indeed. I've heard of situations that even in the pulpit, we've had preachers that kill themselves in the pulpit. So I mean, I've had preachers that drop dead in the pulpit. So don't ever think that it can't happen, because I'm telling you, as much as you think that it can't happen, ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, it can happen. It can happen. And I'm thankful that Lady Tracy is just reiterating that she's definitely living proof. Um, and I would even venture to say that there's probably quite a few folk that have dealt with it. It just was not clinically diagnosed. they probably were dealing with it. Um, and so I pray that this has been a blessing to you. It's been great. I pray that they've been blessed by, just the practicality of just talking about um, mental health, mental awareness. It's very important. It's very important. As always, I want to just share with you that the Smith Agency is hiring. We have crossed over, and now we are now fully up and running, and we are hiring insurance agents. And so, if you're interested in becoming an agent, we would love to speak to you. We would love to speak to you. You can reach our office at 443-898-8178, or you can email me if you're interested at bishoptsmith@hotmail.com. And you're going to see advertisement everywhere. You're going to see advertisement everywhere. So please, if you see it out there and you are interested, we would love to be able to have a conversation with you. And as a matter of fact, as I'm kind of talking about that, um, one of the things that I as a senior insurance agent, I've now discovered that the insurance companies are handling suicide differently.
Are they really?
Um, I'm one of the things that I want to share with all of you, and I pray that you also share this with your family and your friends. If anyone needs a quote for insurance, I'm going to put that in the chat. But I want you all to know this. I want you to know this. Um, our agency has now, because of uh, where we are and how we've been able to develop what we develop, there's not any condition that we can't write. There's not any condition we can't write. Um, I have a situation where a person uh, clinically had uh, HIV. They're taking medications, and they have some other issues, and we were able to write them. We were able to write them. We can write individuals who have amputations. We can write individuals who have cancer. Um, I am so privileged to be in the position that I'm in, but to speak to what I was talking about, a couple of the carriers that we have, I noticed that they have relaxed their suicide coverage, which, because in previous times, if an individual had committed suicide, then that meant that there was no coverage. There was no coverage. But now um, there's coverage.
Wow.
There's coverage now. Because what'll happen now is they'll pay out a portion of the policy.
Times have really changed.
Times have changed. Times have changed. So for those of you who you may be interested in, or you may know someone that's interested, please, take the time and go ahead and just send them that link. The link is now right there in the chat, where you can really just go ahead and you can click the link, and you can go right ahead, and they can get a quote from us. They get a quote from us, and like I said, we can write anything. We can write anything. And I'm not just making that up. I mean, we can literally write anything. And I have never been more prouder to be in the position that I am in. And so, for those of you that would want to get a quote, and I pray that uh, all of you would want to get a quote, because given the circumstances that we are facing in this era, and I want to say this very strongly to all of you that are out there, please understand, with the appearance of a COVID-19, of a Delta variant, of a Omicron variant, and now this new variant, um, I just want you all to understand that insurance is getting ready to make some other changes. Now they have relaxed their suicide coverage. They have relaxed it, but at the same time, they're going to be making some other changes because of COVID-19. So I'm admonishing everyone, please, if you don't have a financial plan, please contact us. Please contact us. You can reach out to me at Bishop T. Smith at hotmail.com, or you can just right there, just go ahead and fill that out. And because the link is right there, just go ahead and fill it out and get a quote. Get a quote because it doesn't take but a couple of minutes, and we can quote you, and we can customize the policy so that the premiums are not astronomical. We can put you right where you need to be. um, Even for people who need mortgage protection for husbands and wives in case the mate dies. We can cover that house to make sure things are well. We can also cover income. We have income protection. We have income protection. So we've got things in place to really, really help you. And very soon, we'll also be able to provide your car insurance and your homeowner's insurance and all of these different things. And so I just want to say, uh, as we're talking about suicide and mental health and things like that, I just want to let you know that please do yourself a favor and make sure that your family is covered. Make sure your family is covered. Uh, while you're in your right mind, make sure you take care of your family because it's very important. Would you say, First Lady?
Absolutely, it is.
It's very important. So listen, it's been good. I pray that you all had a wonderful time just being with us. We certainly enjoy being with you each and every week. We enjoy being with you. Certainly, we want to make sure that you all are subscribing to our YouTube page. Make sure you're subscribing to our YouTube page. You can search for us at the Love Center, Maryland, and make sure that you click subscribe so that way, number one, when we're doing certain events and certain things. Number two, when we are having our virtual services, you'll get those notifications. So please make sure that you do that. If you want to make a donation, certainly you can make a donation. Again, there's the link right there. You can do that at 410-873-9100, or you can go to our Cash App at One Love Center, at One Love Center. Also, as you've heard me talk about before, I was able to write my first composite. It is My Mind on Paper. It is The Making of a Dorian Leader, the expository of leadership and success. It is available on Amazon. It's available on Amazon right now. You can go to Amazon in the search tab and just type in The Making of a Dorian Leader. And the book is $23.99. You can order it off of Amazon, or you can go right to our website, www.tlcmd.org, and you can go right to the landing page and just click The Making of a Dorian Leader. It'll take you right over there. You can purchase the book. If you purchase it from me, I will autograph that book before we send it out to you. If you buy it from Amazon, they just going to send it to you. But if you get it from us directly, we'll autograph that book and get it right out to you. All right, we'll get that right out to you. Listen, I want you all to join us for the Love Center service. You can, for those of you that are virtual, you can visit us at www.tlcmd.org. If you want to visit us online, we are relaxed from our in-person. As of right now, we're going to be coming back very, very soon. But for right now, we're relaxed and want everybody to just be safe as we are still managing through this season of this new variant to make sure everybody is safe. So you'll be able to watch our services online at www.tlcmd.org, or you can watch us if you are in our Facebook Love Center group page. If you're on our Facebook Love Center group page, you can watch us. Or if you are on our YouTube page, you can watch us. All right. So listen, I want everybody to have a wonderful remaining week. Make this the best week of your life. Make this the best week of your life. This is the Love Center because we are a church
Where love is in the center.
It's who we are. It's what we do. I want everybody to really make this the best week. Do what you have never done. Explore what you have never explored before. Because in doing so, I believe there is something out there that is really for you. All right. Watch your mental health. Watch your neighbor's mental health. Be aware. Be aware of what's going on. All right. And when you can, help somebody. The Lord bless you. We look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.